Alright everyone, it's time for Vermont Issues episode 13, Industrial Hemp in the state of Vermont, because apparently there are now 80 people that are licensed to grow it. Now, I think it should be, because it's not narcotic, why should it be regulated at all? People should be able to plant it if they want to without a license, but that's the state of Vermont's way of excising money out of the productive classes. As always, government doesn't want anything to be untaxed. It's like with marijuana legalization. What do you think Phil Scott really, do you think he's actually concerned about some kid smoking a joint? No, he's not dumb enough to think that they're not already doing that from time to time. But he does want to impose lots and lots of taxes and fees and regulatory paperwork to make it harder for people to grow marijuana and make money off of it. I think what he wants is for people not to be able to get ahead, wants to siphon a large proportion of the proceeds off for the state, because they realize it's a potential cash crop too. But hemp is not the same as recreational marijuana, man. Hey, get high. Hemp plants are used for fiber, and their seeds are used as a food or even a fuel source. It can even be used for bioremediation. The hemp plant doesn't really siphon much out of the soil. It's basically an oversized weed, in the most literal sense. So there are advantages to using industrial hemp. There are definite advantages to growing this plant. For paper production only, it would be a huge boom in our economy. You could probably create some thousands of fairly decent jobs if you were to actually deregulate the situation and then just tax people normally on the income that they're making when businesses go up. But nobody within the state government has thought of this. Nobody within the nation seems to have thought of this. They shouldn't be hyper-regulating everything, otherwise it's pointless. It's like with recreational marijuana when it was defeated in Ohio. And I know that's a little bit different from hemp production, totally different usage. But they defeated it, and the anti-drug / pro-police state people crowed and cheered without being honest enough to tell people it was primarily defeated because it would have created a heavily regulated state monopoly system on growing and distribution. So it wouldn't have benefited anybody. We're trying to avoid that in Vermont. We should be using a model closer to what whether it's Colorado or Washington State, they sort of legalized it and don't regulate it much. We should be going towards the less regulated side of a legalization model. The same should be true of hemp. So the fact that people are licensed to grow it is great. And the fact that it's a cash crop, that it's fairly easily grown is great. The fact that we have the climate for it's great. The fact we can create a few jobs already is great. But if you were to deregulate it further, you would create more jobs because the industry would take off. Vermont would be able to outcompete any other state potentially. If we created that cottage industry, we could create thousands of jobs. Some of them would be higher paying. And then you just tax things at the normal level, which, by the way, with so much extra money coming into the state, maybe you could drop the tax rate a little bit. Or something along those lines, or at least keep it from rising over time like some of the idiots in the State House want to happen. That's what we should be doing. Unfortunately, what we're actually doing is heavily regulating it, but at least it's there. It is a benefit, even if it's one that's strangulated by, again, government jumps ahead of the private market, lays the groundwork to prevent things from being as productive as they could be. Vermont has done this more than most states, and most states do it anyway, so a little bit of a problem there. But it's good to see. I mean, hemp never should have been illegal anyway. They're like, oh, it kind of resembles the cannabis plant, is sort of related to the plants people are smoking, so we're going to make it illegal. You know, all that rope you were using in the First World War, that was all made out of hemp twine. Back then, people primarily used hemp as paper. If you know anything about old books, you'll know this. There are a lot of old books that are printed on hemp, and they've stood the passage of time a lot better than the pulp paper, which destroys forests and is woefully inefficient and uses all sorts of chemicals for processing. It is much cheaper, it is much longer lasting, it is much more durable. It's superior in every way to pulp paper. We never should have been using paper pulp for paper. We always should have been using hemp to begin with. it would have been more responsible for everything. It would have been cheaper and more environmentally friendly. We can easily grow all the hemp we need for that. Got plenty of room to do that in. Because instead of clear cutting some forest, mashing the trees into pulp and then pressing them out, which is a rather primitive concept, instead of making a pulp, you're just taking the hemp and then processing it in a manner not too much unlike papyrus or something like that. And that same piece of land can be used for that crop and other crops that simply rotate as normal. Yeah, the United States could become the paper, biofuel, and hippie food barons of the world if we let hemp take off. But we need to deregulate it further. That is our next step, really, in the state should be to try to deregulate these things insofar as we're able to do so through public action. Because if we can get that accomplished, then we can create more jobs. I would think that'd be a good thing for the state. State government disagrees. They want people to be arranged into two groups, the haves and the have-nots. And that's been a problem within northern New England for some time. New Hampshire, supposedly aside, they're highly taxed too. It's just they've got a few that they don't even have a sales tax. So on that end, it's a little bit better. But Vermont is now producing hemp. It's open for business, kinda, as long as you get an expensive license to do so and tell the government, no, I'm not gonna set fire to my hemp field or grow like random marijuana plants among it that kind of blend in, and I'm not gonna sit out there in a daze giggling and eating Twinkies or something like that. And then the government wants to come in. I'm sure they'll be conducting lots and lots of inspections and finding lots and lots to bitch about, because that's how bureaucrats justify their existence. Oh, these plants are too close together. Oh, that one's had some disease, so we're going to burn your whole field or something. It'll probably do that. And it'll be freaky. And it'll be nonsensical, because that's how the police state really operates. But we should be legalizing, it shouldn't just be hemp, though. Yeah, that's a cash crop. We should also be legalizing recreational marijuana. If somebody's only growing a few plants, they shouldn't even need a license. Save the licensing and fees for people who are growing it commercially and selling to dispensaries. If they're growing a couple plants for their own use or for their friends, if they're growing a little patch in their garden of hemp, who fucking cares? Maybe they're making their own paper at home or so. You don't regulate them if they want to plant a couple of trees and then mash them up and turn them into paper. It's basically, you don't harass them for growing some vines and making like rope or some bullshit out of it. They don't get harassed, so why should it be harassed just because it's the hemp plant? It's not even narcotic. It doesn't even make any sense. It's a real problem. They're stymieing the growth of Vermont industry. And it's one that's, by the way, green and won't destroy the scenery. I would think that's the kind of industry you would want in the state of Vermont. You could have 1 or 2 mills that actually go back to functioning. Some of these old mill towns, they have these great big abandoned buildings that have been abandoned for years and years. Turn them into hemp processing plants. Then they'll look cool. You know, you can have your Vermont mandated alcohol center, aka microbrewery, in the basement or something. People can go sample the beer and then look at the hemp processing. Turn it into do it like the Ben & Jerry's factory there, Vermont Teddy Bear Company or something. Give tours and make it almost kind of like a museum that's also a functioning factory. Be great for tourism. Tourists from all over the world come to see Vermont's weed plants. Wouldn't that be great? And you can have little bins of bud there too. Once marijuana is recreationally legalized with all sorts of different colors, and they can come in and it'll be like Amsterdam or something. Yeah, it'd be great for tourism. That's about all. Peace out.